Hey friends, I'm Axel Freud, a queer Minneapolis-based game designer and the host of Hatch This Way, a limited audio series where I chat with other queer folks in the tabletop industry to learn all about who they are and how they contribute to the hobby by being their authentic selves. And today I'm joined by Bree Horstkamp of Mako Games. Bree, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing today?
Good. And I think we discussed, despite the world, falling apart around us, we're doing our best, I think.
Yeah, falling apart. I have no idea what you're talking about. Totally oblivious.
So, welcome to the show. The big question: how do you identify?
So I'm about to tick every box for you.
All the boxes?
All the boxes. So I am a non-binary trans female who is pansexual, asexual, and aromantic and poly.
That's a lot of boxes. You're right.
It's a lot of boxes.
You just grabbed that whole queer umbrella and put it over.
I basically went shopping and just said yes to everything.
Put it all in the cart. Why not? So let's talk through, I don't know, do you want to just talk through your experience and how all those simultaneously exist for you and just what it's like having all those fun labels and
confusing and hard to explain sometimes. It's honestly it's not that bad. A lot of people now understand what pansexual means, though bisexual is typically the easier term for people. But generally speaking, I've never had an issue explaining that part. Polyamory, I don't know how people don't know what this is yet, but if you're trying to form a full D&D campaign, it's the easiest way to do it. If you need all the streaming services, it's the easiest way to afford all of them. You have a lot of things that you need in your life, and one person can't necessarily fill it. Poly is the way for you.
In this economy, how can you afford not to be?
Exactly. All I'm saying is gay commune for polyamorous couples. Great. I think that's the way that it should be. For the asexual and aromantic, that was a lot harder to figure out, but that was just, I came across it during relationships over the years and started researching and talking to more people in the community. And they really helped me understand a lot by introducing to me new terminologies and things like that. And I just started to realize the way that I show romantic interest in people, or, what typical people would say is romantic interest, is vastly different from normal, quote unquote, romantic interest. So, or sexual interest. So it took 6 years for me to figure that out.
So you mentioned that you identify as a non-binary trans female. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. So basically, obviously, that means I do not identify in the binary as that people typically see, right? So for me, that means that I identify as not having just one set of genitals, but I identify as having both. And I kind of learned a lot about this just when I was learning about bottom surgery and stuff like that, and going through the therapy when I was initially trying to get HRT medication. They kind of heavily pressure you into that binary feel. So it's if you're transitioning to female, then you have to want that set of genitalia, which is kind of frustrating and not something that I ever identified with. So I have flip-flopped back and forth on wanting bottom surgery, and it has been very, very difficult for me. And it took about 3 or 4 years for me to finally, of just having that thought of one does not feel right. Having this one or that one does not feel right. Doesn't, you can technically have null and do neither, but that didn't feel right. And then I found out that yes, having both is actually possible. It is expensive with the current medical field, and there's not a lot of doctors that do it. I can think of 3 in the United States, but it is possible, and that in itself is amazing. To actually learn that I can actually be me, right? The way that I identify. and that's amazing.
Yeah. So you literally just said like it was amazing to have that option. Do you think that's like a common experience when somebody has like surgery to change their physical body to kind of match that inner image of themselves, like that process and options?
Yeah, I definitely think that there is a euphoria that people have for that. There is also people that are pressured into fitting the binary and that go through surgeries and that wasn't actually the best for them. Unfortunately, that is like the case. That does happen. I know people that have had it and actually identify like me. So they were forced to stay with the binary and have the more traditional bottom surgery, but they didn't realize that both was an option. By the way, this is actually more in like social spaces like Reddit and Discord and things like that. It's known as Salmation, SALMACIAN. So there is a Reddit, there's like a subreddit for it, and it's just r/Salmation. And on that Reddit subreddit, you will see like a link to a Discord server called Salmation Central. And so there's tons of information like on this, but yeah, there's people that identify as Salmation and they had no idea that it was an option, and they were kind of just forced into one, like just the one route, either no bottom surgery or having bottom surgery and having a really rough time afterwards. So, but there are also just people that are like, they have bottom surgery and it's just euphoric for them. It's right.
Can we real quick, I have like two main questions. Can we quick talk about the difference between like gender and sex? And just so people have like when we say non-binary, this is specifically talking about sex, right? As opposed to gender non-binary.
So the way that I see it and the way that it's been discussed with me is gender is based on societal norms versus sex is based on like, how you were born. I guess in that sense, when we're talking about having bottom surgery, it is about sex, but you were born as like AMAB, like assigned male at birth, or assigned female at birth is AFAB. But let's say you identify as like you're a transgender. So I am AMAB and I am trans female, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I identify as having the same genitalia as someone who is AFAB, right? Mm-hmm. Some people are perfectly fine with the genitalia that they were born with. And I don't personally identify as like my genitalia being a part of just my gender or just my sex. Like it's just I'm me, right? So I don't know if that's helpful in like what you were trying to identify or.
Yeah, I just trying to put some language around how you talk about, because I feel like they can be like separate ideas of like, they're not tied together. Like, if you have a penis, you're not therefore a man, like separating those,
Correct. Yeah. So I apologize. So I better understand your question now. So,
no, that's fine.
So for me, the reason it's hard is because I identify as non-binary for both, right?
Sure.
So like I am more, I present myself more androgynously, generally speaking. So I already don't fit like, very feminine female looks or very masculine like looks. I wear what's comfortable, which typically is, leggings or skinny jeans and a band or an anime t-shirt. Like I just dress for comfort, which typically is more andro. So that would be like the gender portion of like how society sees me, right? But then the sexual aspect of that, or like sex part, is your genitals or how you were viewed based on your body. And so like I identify as both as non-binary, so sometimes that's a little bit more difficult for me to split.
No, for sure. Yeah, I think I just remember having a conversation with my partner's brother, and he just never considered that those two things could be different. For a lot of people, like, oh, I have a penis, therefore I am a man, and there's no separating that, even though it's much more nuanced than that. So just putting that out there for people who have never considered that could be two separate, things. I think my other question is talking about the difference between Salmation versus like hermaphroditic what would the difference be there? Because I think hermaphrodite to me also means both sexes.
So intersex is typically the term used, and it means, as far as I am aware, and I hope I am getting this correct, that you are born with both genitalia. But most intersex people, when they're a baby, the doctor and or the parents decide which set of genitals the baby keeps. 9 times out of 10, they do not get to keep both, which is its own conversation of why that's really terrible. But unfortunately, I do know 2 people that are like that as well. The main difference from the community that I've been a part of, the subreddit as well as the Discord, has been that intersex is something you were born as, like you were physically born with both sets of genitalia, versus salmation is I was born with one set of genitalia, but I identify as having both.
Got it. That makes sense. Is like hermaphrodite a like bad word? I feel like I learned it as like a biological term in biology class, but it seems like very close to transvestite in terms of like it could be taken as, it's probably like depends on context maybe.
I think it depends on the context as well as the person that you're talking to.
Sure.
Like I said, I know 2 people that were born intersex. One of them absolutely refuses the term that you used, to the point where I got so used to not even saying it, like, at all.
Yeah, as I said it, I was like, I know it, like I'm saying it is like a term I learned in school. I don't know, like as I said, I was like, it feels like kind of dehumanizing. I don't know. Has it?
I don't. It's not meant to be. I don't think. Like, when it first like was introduced as terminology, I don't think that was meant for it to be dehumanizing. But
I think it has a weird connotation now, like a negative connotation. Like it becomes that like othering word, kind of like queer used to be, or it still is, but it's kind of been reclaimed. I don't know that that term has been reclaimed or anything. Intersex sounds like a lot better to me.
Yeah, that's the term that I've been basically told to use by the 2 people that I know. It's also the term that is pretty widely used in Salmation Discord for individuals who were born with both. So for anyone listening who ends up deciding to join the Discord for whatever reason, like that they just want to learn more, or that's something that they like, that's how they identify as well, and just didn't know that it was a thing, you will see that term used.
Well, at the very least, hopefully I have not offended anyone. And
I don't think that you have. You definitely explained it.
Hopefully I've at the very least helped someone else not offend someone. So there you go.
Yeah.
I'm here to get the uncomfortable questions out. Gosh. I mean, you know, these conversations we're just figuring it out, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone has to start learning somewhere, right?
Right. So I tried, we got better.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your journey of self-discovery? Like at what point, and I guess in almost what order, maybe that could be kind of fun, of like, did you kind of discover these identities?
So I knew from a young age that I was trans. I went through the whole like denial stage of everything. And so the first step was pansexual after that. Realized that all of my friends at the time, and this was like late 90s going into the early 2000s, were very closed-minded. And so when they were talking about, oh, you can only love women if you're amab, and I was like, no, that's not me. And then that slowly started, like, I started exploring that as I like got into like late high school, early college. And then, I don't know, I feel like that just developed naturally. But then the 2 years after I started college, so in about 2010, I realized that asexual was also something that I really identified with, because I did not need or want sex at all. And so that kind of, I don't know how to really explain it, but a lot of people ridiculed me in my circles, like my friend circles, for that, because I was not typical according to what that meant for them. And so I started learning more about the ace umbrella and how that identified with me. And then the aro part came after that, and kind of in a similar fashion. My first marriage ended because my form of romantic interest in people was different. And so it just kind of fell apart from there. And I started just researching, and the more I researched, the more I learned about myself. And then now here we are with so many labels.
So where did you grow up? Like, what was the environment like?
Very different. So I am from Northern Virginia. And so I currently live in Central Virginia, near Richmond, Virginia. Elementary school, I grew up in the ghetto. And then, like, very poor families, it was not the best living environment, gang shootings, things like that. And then in middle school, I moved out to the country. And that was also a very jarring experience from what I was used to. And then in high school, I moved back into the ghetto. And so I got to grow up with that again because my mom and dad divorced. So that's all my mom could afford. So,
you said you knew at like a young age that you knew you were trans. Did you have words for it? Or was it more of just like, I know this isn't, like, something's off?
I didn't have the word trans, like transgender, was not something that was really talked about at the time, at least in my circles. So it was very, very difficult for me to understand exactly how, like, who I was. I just knew I wasn't a boy. That's all my, like, AMAB friends were like, oh, this is this, and this is how it's supposed to be, and this is how I feel. Do you feel the same way? And I said, no.
Did you have a chance to, like, explore gender identity then? Or were you just kind of locked in that AMAB box for a long time?
I was locked in that box for a while. Part of it because I was forced to be. Growing up in the neighborhood that I did, especially in high school, I was one of 3 white households in like 500 homes. Daily occurrence was everyone that I interacted with at school going to play basketball at the basketball court in the neighborhood, and people would put their guns down on the ground so that they could play basketball. It was like a neutral area. This was my everyday. So coming out as trans at that time, even if I had the word, probably not the safest choice for me. So I voluntarily locked myself in that box for a few years. And then I explored more in college because I moved to upstate New York to go to school.
And then do you feel like you've found a more supportive and accepting group of friends and, like, chosen family since then? I would hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't come out until 2016. I knew way before that, obviously, but I didn't know how my dad's side of the family would take it. And so 2016 was just like, I have to come out now. I can't live my life this way any longer. And it went great. My mom is super supportive. I had a whole situation with my brother where he was not supportive for a little while, but he has since been extremely supportive. All of my immediate friend group is part of the LGBT sphere in some way. And I'm part of like 9 or 10 different LGBT focused Discord servers, and multiple that are game design servers as well as LGBT focused. So that's also really nice.
I mean, since you mentioned it, and I'm curious, what was the situation around the marriage? Was that pre coming out or is that post coming out?
She knew when we started dating, but it kind of fell apart because she no longer, I guess it got too real. Like, she knew, she was okay with it. She was supportive, did the whole thing that I needed to do with like therapy at the time, because that was a mandatory thing I had to go through at that period. And then once I got my HRT medication, no longer okay. And so that just really like fell apart. And a lot of that also, I guess, had to do with the like asexual part that I had mentioned earlier. So it was like she was already dealing with that and like, I guess, not being exactly the happiest because of that. And then turned around, and me, like, I guess officially starting HRT was just the final nail in the coffin for her. So she's like, nope, I'm out.
Like, my brother recently went through a similar-ish experience, and I don't know. Part of me is like, I guess like everyone's in a happier place, I would hope. It still sucks to like think someone loves you unconditionally and then to be like, well, actually, there are conditions, like regardless if it's family or marriage. I think that's a lot to process for anyone. And I think that's kind of a, unfortunately, somewhat common shared experience where people have.
Unfortunately.
I don't know. It lets us find the people who do love us unconditionally. So
yeah, very true.
Another identity that I talked to you about, but I want to dig into, is you said you identify as a furry. So I want to talk about what that means. And I think there's some misconceptions about like what that is I think even in the queer umbrella. I think people are aware of furries, but they don't really know what it means. They probably don't talk about it much. So can we start with like overview of what does it mean to be a furry?
For me, or generally, because that's really hard to like say for the whole community.
Personally, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So for me, it's just another identity that you have, the same as like all the others that we've already discussed. But again, that's for me. So I had always known that I enjoyed like the concept of anthropomorphic animals. I thought that they're great. Every time I see artwork, I'm like, why can't this exist in real life? Why can't there be like this just every day? That'd be super cool. And I think that ends up coming across in a lot of my games too, which we'll get to later, I guess. But I think it really hit home when I was in VR chat, actually. So I was in VR chat, and I was making fun of a friend of mine for having a shark avatar. And so their shark avatar had like the super big tail that most anthropomorphic sharks have. And I was just like, how do you even sit down with a tail like that? Like, I don't understand why, like your snout and everything. It's just like, that has to be so frustrating. And they were like, just try finding avatars that are cool. And I was like, okay. So I did. So I searched, I found like different cat avatars and dogs, dragons. I tried a shark, things like that. And the more I explored the space, the more I started realizing that it just felt right. I already have a more stocky frame as a trans woman. And so when I came across the shark avatar, it felt perfect. It felt like at home. So I'm walking around this space, this VR space, and I can see my tail. I can see my tail in the mirror, and I'm like, that tail is amazing. I can't believe I used to make fun of this. I don't understand why I would do that. And like I would see my reflection and say like, that feels right, you know? And like you get a haircut and you're like, that feels right. Or like a new outfit and you're like, that feels right. And you're like, all right, cool. That felt right the way that looked. And the more I explored that space, the more I really enjoyed the people and the environment and the atmosphere of what it meant to be part of the furry community. And just like my identity as being a shark, which was really cool.
Talk to me a little bit. Let's start with like maybe misconceptions when you usually like tell people that, or they ask about it, or however people come across that. How do you usually explain it, or what's the reaction you get?
That I don't eat people just because I'm a shark. No, a lot of people are just, for lack of a better like example, even though I absolutely hate this example as someone who is pansexual, is no, that does not mean that I want to do sexual acts with animals. It is not the same thing. I don't know why people equate these two things. It's not. That's not that. It's very frustrating. It's just another community. And that's a lot of times that's how I just explain it to people. I've had this conversation with people at work multiple times. I just feel it's something that feels right to me. So when they're like, so what does that mean? Like, are you going to start coming to work in a fursuit? It's like, no, not everyone in the furry community wears a fursuit. It's okay if they do. Most of the time, people who do wear fursuits do it in private settings or at events and things like that. I've never personally run into anyone like out grocery shopping in a fursuit. I don't know if there's anyone that has that I know. Have you? Have you ever seen that happen?
No, I usually think it's like a safe, curated space.
Yeah, I don't know. So a lot of times they don't even have a lot of like questions because, as you said, there's a lot of misconceptions, but there's also just not a lot of knowledge out there for people. I think they are just like, oh, furry's a thing. I have a preconceived feeling of what that means. I'll ask one or two questions and then move on. So it honestly hasn't really been a big thing.
Yeah, it might be one of those like very niche and like outside the box experiences for someone to like really wrap their head around. Where it's like, even if you explain it to them, they'd be like, I don't get it.
Yeah, but like the weird thing is too is that a lot of people just accept like cat girls.
Oh yeah,
cat boys and stuff like that. So it's like I don't understand why. Like that's just like a thing that everyone's just like, okay, that's cool. It's like that's still kind of like either in the furry community or like right there on the edge, depending on how that person identifies. And so like if that's not a big thing or needs questioning, I don't understand why any of the others need to be. So
I personally think it's been like associated with like hypersexualized acts the same way I feel like trans identities have been, or like I think people have taken the term transvestite and like just equated that into trans, even though those are extremely different things. Of like transvestite is a sexual thing. It's I do this thing when I have sex. Whereas trans is an identity, has nothing to do with sex. And I think people have done a similar thing with furries, like, oh, this is people and how they like to have sex. And it's like, I don't think that's the case. I
mean, I can't say it's not the case for some people.
I think it is for some people, but it's not like the norm from what I understand. It's like just a way people see themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I told this to another guest, but I was like, I don't have to fully understand it for it to be valid. Like, it's okay if I don't fully get it to appreciate that someone else enjoys it. I don't think it's hurting anyone. I've never read anything about furry crimes.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're there, but
I mean, maybe, but I don't think the furries are coming for us in any capacity. I also think I never made the connection of like, oh, you want to have sex with animals. Like, I don't personally see that connection, but I guess I could understand how someone could jump to that conclusion if they wanted to. It's a jump.
Yeah, it's a leap for sure.
It's a leap. And no one's saying that. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else that you wish more people understood about it? Or before I get to that question, talk to me more about finding that community and what that's been like.
Honestly, it's been really eye-opening for how accepting the furry community is. I mentioned at the beginning that I am non-binary trans. So obviously that means I do not identify as the binary. So the way that I personally identify is a little bit more accepting in the furry community, generally speaking. So if you were to talk about it in a furry community, you could literally just join the furry community and talk to people. You would just find that this identity is very common. People would talk to you openly, and it would not even be a thing. There would need to be no justification for having this conversation. But outside of the furry community, my identity is a little bit more confusing for people, I guess. And so that just like open validation and acceptance of people based on their identity, regardless of what it is something that I absolutely have loved. I have had multiple ex-partners that are also furries, and just being able to like discuss with them different things about like sonas and learn, like find artists in the community that do artwork, like furry artwork is crazy and just amazing to like see. the way that people identify and stuff like that. And it's just so amazing to see just how creative everyone is just really great. Because a lot of people are like, oh, you're a shark. What kind of shark? That's it. Doesn't matter what it is. So like, I'm a tiger shark. Cool. That's it. Yeah. Well, I have a friend who's a griffin mixed with like a bat and like other stuff like a dragon. And it's like you could do whatever you want. You want to be a griffin with a dragon head and dragon tail. That's awesome. You want to be a bunny, like have bunny ears, but have no other features resembling for a bunny, and everything else is some totally other animal. Cool. That's awesome. I want to see that. Like, show me that Sona artwork because that sounds amazing. And that's something that's just always really cool to see. So for my brain, I love creativity. So when I see those kinds of things, I just jump at it and I'm like, I want to see what this community has to offer. And it's never let me down so far.
Yeah, I think there's nothing like that brings me the same level of joy as seeing someone just like be celebrated or like see the joy in them when they just get super passionate or connect with something that they're super passionate about. And I feel like the furry community is someone like finding something that is like so personal and specific to them. I don't know why you would want to dull that sparkle. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's like, it's such a cool thing for someone to find something that they love so much that is like extremely personal. I think my limited experience with the furry community has been, I tried out Guild Wars 2 for a hot second.
Mm-hmm.
Not super for me, but I wanted a queer server to join because the game made no sense. They just like throw you into it. And I found a furry Discord server that I joined, and it was just like the nicest, supportive people. I didn't play the game for very long, but I was like, yeah, this is like a super welcoming space. I don't know why
literally
people get weird about it.
Yeah, you could just walk in, introduce yourself, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. As long as you're supportive of them being themselves, they will support you and you doing what you want to do and how you are. So it's like, okay, awesome. I love this.
And I think that's true for pretty much every queer identity, is if you just let them be themselves, literally no one is coming for you.
Yes, exactly.
If you can take one thing away from this series, it's that. I hope. Well, I appreciate you digging into that. Is there any other aspects of yourself that you'd like to discuss that you think, I don't know, would be fun to share in terms of, because I think for Sona, it doesn't mean queer also. I don't think we dug into that. Like, it's not like a queer thing, but it is a queer, like, safe space for queer people traditionally.
Yeah, it really is. I mentioned that I am in a lot of different servers for like furry culture and furry community, and every single one of them is very queer centric, or at least queer accepting. I have yet to run into a situation where there was some kind of bigotry that happened in the server and it was not acted upon extremely swiftly, because these spaces are designed to be safe for anyone to express how they feel, as long as you are doing it in a way that isn't detrimental or harmful to someone else.
Okay. I mean, I loved all that. That was so much good stuff. Do you want to start talking about, how about this? As a great transition, you mentioned how that percolates into your game designs.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that journey and how that's going for you?
Sure. So, yes, I love anthropomorphized characters. There we go. Hard words are hard. So all of my characters in both of my current like major titles that I've been working on are either human or anthro animals. So for instance, the very first game that I had worked on is Poverties. I released it with my first company, and it was not like, I was very new, very, very green to the industry. Had no idea what I was doing. So it kind of flopped, but the game concept was so good and the artwork was so cute that I was like, I can't let this die. So I reworked on it and stuff like that. And I have actually been trying to get it to a place where I can try and re-release it just from my own money. And it's just all like anthro cats. So you're choosing one of 5 cats to build a cat tree tower. And that's what the artwork is showing, is like your anthro cats. Another game I've been working on is a trading card game, and it's called Glyph. And I have werewolves and cat folk, lizard folk, centaurs, merfolk that aren't just like your typical merfolk where they have like a mermaid tail. They only have fins on their forearms and on their legs to allow them, like to help them swim. But other than that, they look like humans. There's tons of different races that I've been exploring with it that are all like anthro style races. And everyone that I've talked to has been like, I love that you're making this like more mainstream, as like you are integrating as a core aspect of your art design for this game, and not just making it like some sub thing. Like you brought up Guild Wars. A lot of those characters, like the races in that game, are supposed to be more anthro style races. Whereas like Final Fantasy, some of them are anthro, and then others are just like, okay, it's a human with bunny ears. Okay. And I think it's neat. I love the character design and the race designs in those games, but sometimes they like hit differently than others. Like their objective is different, if that makes sense.
What initially got you into game design where you're like, I could do this, I want to try this? What was that impotence that said like, oh yeah, this is for me?
So I used to compete, and I still kind of do, in trading card games, like high-level trading card games. I've been to nationals and competed at regional events for multiple games. And so by playing these games at a high level, I was like, I can do this. I could totally make a game. That would be really awesome. Let's make a card game. And so probably around like 2004, 2005, so I was middle of high school, I actually started making a card game with some friends of mine. And we would just play in between playing whatever game at the time. I think it was Yu-Gi-Oh! And we would just play that casually and mess around with it and just kind of balance. The more I decided to get into that, into like the trading card game design space, the more I realized that my brain just thought that way. So every single time I would do anything, play a video game, play a new card game, play a board game, I was already thinking about the mechanics, not the game itself. How does the mechanics of this game function? Why did the designer choose to use this particular design? Why did they use this mechanic for this instead of doing something else? And I just started tinkering with it at that level. And that probably also made me lean heavily into coding for a while, because that's actually what my major was in college, is I wanted to know the nitty gritty, the back end, what was going on. And so the more I got into just learning about that, the more I fell in love with game design.
Cool. I had no idea that I wanted to do anything with board games until well out of college. So I think it's awesome that you knew it like in high school. I didn't know anything in high school. That's I wasn't high level performing anything in high school.
Before I was high performing in like card games, I actually competed in Halo. So I actually traveled. I have some friends that make fun of me for this, but unironically, I traveled with Major League Gaming, the MLG, while I was in high school. I actually have like a hoodie from back then that I got in like 2006, and my current girlfriend actually made fun of me for it last week, because you're like, I don't know anyone who unironically has that hoodie, which is why I felt like I had to say that. I did travel. I played Halo 2. I played Halo 3. My brother actually still competes in Halo 3. And it's a great way to exercise your mind. It is an ever-evolving space when you compete in games. So then when I started playing card games at a super high level and competing at regional events and stuff like that, I realized that I was really enjoying the like chess battle of what can I do to outsmart my opponent. I know they're going to want to do this on X turn. What can I do to stop that? What do I have available to me? I don't have the correct answer right now. Well, what can I do to get there? That kind of ebb and flow of games is what really made me dive really deep into the space both video game wise and like tabletop game and card game wise.
Yeah, I'm terrible at games, especially strategic card games. So we are very, very different people. I had Yu-Gi-Oh, the Game Boy Color game, I want to say, and I loved that. It was nothing like the real game, but I had a good time fusing cards that made no sense to fuse whatsoever. Yeah. What a mechanic.
Yeah,
I was like, none of this makes sense.
Yeah, the fact that you could watch the anime and not know how to play the game at all because they just broke all the rules was really funny. But yeah, I still play the Dragon Ball Super card game. I actually just like have them all over the place in my room. I competed in the 2018 national championships for it. I love the game. I love the space. I love talking to people about games.
So you like card games. Are there any other games that you like to bring to the table or recommend? Like, what are some of your faves?
So currently, a lot of them are card-based games right now.
Makes sense.
So I've been playing a lot of like Here to Slay. I really love that game for some reason.
Is that loosely based on Slay the Spire?
No, so Here to Slay is by Unstable Games. Yeah. And so basically it's like me and my friend just kind of equate it to like D&D style thing. You're basically taking cute animals, and each race of animal or like different type of animal, so like all rabbits or all bears are a different class, like a D&D class, so like bard, ranger, everything like that. And you are trying to do one of two things. Either kill 3 epic monsters by assembling like a party that you can use and getting lucky with attack rolls and stuff like that, or assemble a full party. So if you can assemble a party, a member of every class, then you win the game. And so you can like interfere with your opponents, or you can by playing modifier cards when they roll, or like when they're trying to attack and stuff like that. So you can modify their attacks to help or hurt them, or your own. You can stop them from playing things. It's kind of I've really enjoyed it. I feel like it's kind of they took the mechanics from Unstable Unicorns, also by Unstable Games, and then just slapped some extra paint on it. But both really fun games in my opinion.
So aside from, or maybe in addition to your own games, where do you see yourself in current games on the market? Or do you even?
Like what games I'm looking to get?
Yeah, is there anything that you've played or like have seen or have played where you're like, oh, this totally, I see myself in it in some aspect?
There's a few games that I've really wanted to play.
Okay.
But I don't have the money because all of my paychecks after bills from my day job go into like artwork and stuff for my games. So I can barely ever afford games. My birthday just happened about 2 weeks ago. So I actually was gifted some games. So like I have the Isle of Cats, and I can't wait to try that game. That one looked interesting. I still really want to get Wingspan and Oath, which hopefully everyone doesn't just turn off the podcast immediately because I just said I don't have those. So I'm really excited about those. I can't wait for some games that aren't out. Like I'm really excited about Fight Sequence from Jamie at Triple Rainbow Games. I'm super excited about that. I got to play it for the very first time. They did a demo for me, and I ended up talking to them for like 45 minutes about just card game design afterwards because I was so fascinated with the way that everything was like designed and built because it's so different from every game that I've played in that genre. So I was super excited about that. But I just can't wait to kind of explore more games with more people. My board gaming group kind of died locally. So I'm hoping to join a new one soon at some point. And just have like people introduce me a little bit more organically rather than just me looking through the card or like the game store and just be like, which one? You, I guess.
Are you mostly excited about like the mechanics of games? Are there games where like you play and you feel like you're represented as like a queer person or anything like that?
I can't think of a game that I've just seen in the store and just been like, yes, I want that. because queer representation. The first one that comes to mind is Fight Sequence, but that's not out yet. So Jamie did a lot of work with putting a lot of representation into that game, and it shows in the artwork and the design. So that's something that, like, if we're going to go representation wise, that game for sure. A lot of the times I just see myself with like concepts. So what's the mechanic of a game? What was your goal? And sometimes I can just read the back of the box and just say, okay, that concept sounds interesting, but I can already tell you that the way that they executed it is probably not fun. And for me, at least. And so I put it back. But sometimes it's just the art. If the artwork is like cute cats, I'm all for it. In style cats. Or like Poverty's being cute cats. So they got me at cats.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There will always be a market for cute cat games, I firmly believe. That's
now,
just...
once they release a shark-based game that's not just like eating people and like, you know, the very harmful shark stereotype that I'm totally going to advocate is not accurate right now because I don't eat people. I want that game. So someone make that game for me and I will buy it.
I'm so surprised there's not like a... You'd think there's a Jaws game, but that is again very like shark eating people. That's the whole premise.
Yeah, you're trying to avoid being eaten by the shark. That's
yeah. What was that shark simulator where you just like fly through the air and like again eat people? Is that the point of it?
I'm sure.
Like,
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm sure that's what it is.
It was like this unhinged shark game where you're like flying through the water and like jumping to I think gobble up as many people as possible, and it was just like high octane shark NATO-esque.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I don't know, but I've yet to see a shark game that's not like, let's see how many people we can eat.
Yeah, there's just so many more layers to sharks that people have not delved into yet. It's not just,
All I'm saying is don't make me make all the games. I'm leaving this one for the community. They can make this game. I know that you can do it. There's so many talented people in this community. I believe in you. Just send it to me on Twitter, and I will buy it when it's ready.
How do you feel about Street Sharks? Because I loved Street Sharks. Was that slightly before your time?
I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but maybe.
It is a cartoon about anthro sharks who fight crime. And like, oh my God.
I want to see it now. Don't take my silence as like a negative
there
thing.
Is a video,
now.
There's a video of Vin Diesel demoing the toys. Like he does the voices of the different sharks and explains how to play Street Sharks. It is iconic. I'm so happy I got to spread Street Sharks with you. Find the series on YouTube or something. 10 out of 10. I watched the VHS tapes over and over. I had all the toys. Oh my God. Yeah, that's...
I mean, to be fair, I was 5 when this came out.
Okay.
So it may have been maybe just before.
Yeah, it wasn't around for a long time, but it was around for a good time. So...
It says 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about right. There was like Street Sharks, and then Biker Mice from Mars was around the same time. Probably a couple other fun cartoons in that late 90s.
I got Rugrats, Wild Thornberries. You know, those things. Reboot. Like once I got a little bit older and like started watching like Toonami. Like that's the best that I got from my wife for that time frame.
What did I watch them on? I didn't even have TV. I only had VHS at home, so I had to buy the VHS tapes, and I would watch them on repeat. So, I mean, honestly, it was worth meeting you just so I could share the joy of Street Sharks with you. So, anyway, if you want to make a Street Sharks game together, we can probably gobble up that IP and then produce something. I'm down if you are.
Oh, I'm totally down.
Okay. Awesome. I will absolutely buy a copy of that game. I would, if it was out and existed, it would be on my shelf. So
I'm with you right there too. I want it.
I'm so excited. Yeah, we're making it. Okay. we need to end this so we can go make Street Sharks, the board game. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I have to go now. No, we can ask a few more questions. So do you have a goal of like when you're designing games and thinking about games you want to make that kind of like drives your creative decision making?
Yeah. It kind of just depends a little bit on like where I'm at that exact moment. Right now, Glyph, the card game that I've been making, it has been eating up almost all of my thought process. The way that it's designed is essentially you are choosing a character, like a champion, and you are playing as that champion. So that champion has character-specific cards that you can play that only that champion can play. But it's a normal trading card game, so you're basically trying to deck build around that while emphasizing that you are this champion. For instance, I mentioned the Merfolks earlier. The Merfolk champion right now is Laura. She's an archaeologist. So if you want to explore and like have that like feel, then you play Laura. But that's not the only feel that I want to like, show people in this game. So if you want to be a werewolf, or if you want to be an automata, or you want to like get the feel of a dwarf, of how they would interact in this world, each of these champions will feel different. So a lot of my time is like, oh, I'm going to introduce some mechanic that I think is really cool. What can I do, or what kind of character or race can I introduce into Glyph that would showcase that mechanic really, really well, or fit into the story that I want to tell really well. And then there's other times where, like Properties, for example, I wanted to make something that was like a lot more family friendly and approachable. And I felt like building a cat tree tower is kind of fun. And if you want to be a mafia cat that wants to like shake down all of your friends for their treats, then you can do that. Or if you want to be casino cat and you want to manipulate the way the deck works, or manipulate your die roll, or things like that, so kind of cheat the game, then you can do that. If you just want to be happy cat and just enjoy your time with your friends, then you can do that, and you just sit back and you don't interfere with anyone. You're just playing the game for yourself. So the different aspects of like what I'm trying to achieve with like what the game direction is, then that's kind of like the only thing I really think about. For you and your partner, actually, I've been working on a concept with the Properties IP that is co-op. And the whole objective is to work together to prevent a vulture from buying all of the properties in the city. And so you're just like navigating a hex grid and preventing the vulture and all of its money, its corporate greed money, from buying all the properties. So that's the whole objective, is to work together and stop it.
Yeah, if you have a cooperative cat game, we will absolutely play it. 10 out of 10.
All right, give me 6 months. I got you.
Okay, starting and go.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Is there anything you're seeing in the hobby space that is giving you, hope for where the trajectory of the industry is going in terms of inclusion specifically?
I'm not sure, because I kind of stay in my bubble. I have found a bubble of people that I really enjoy hanging out with and communicating with, and it happens to be very queer-centric. And it's just really nice to be able to communicate with them. And I've sort of just focused in that. I've started to spread out a bit. I have made some connections with other people outside of that space on Twitter. Not many, but some. I don't know much about the way that the industry is working besides that, honestly. I was super excited to see BackerKit announce that they're doing actual like backing now, not just like back-end stuff. I was excited to see that. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, GameFound was like the new thing, and then BackerKit was like, hold my beer, we're also going to do it in terms of, it's a crowdfunding platform. So before they were just like, here, we'll handle your addresses and pledges. And then they're like, well, we could just do the front end too, and you could just back games on here, and then we would take out the Kickstarter part of it. Yeah. Is there a reason you're excited for that? Like are you like anti-Kickstarter? Do you want to expand
a little bit? There's a lot of like negative stuff that's happened with Kickstarter in the past that I kind of wish that we could get away from it. Generally speaking, I think that right now there are platforms that are growing and that are being introduced that are great. to be able, like great alternatives, right? If it's just Kickstarter, then you kind of just have to put up with all the negative stuff and just deal with it, which I don't really like. I actually like, to that same vein, things like the Game Crafter, where you don't have to do like a crowdfunding thing and make 500 plus games to be able to produce a game. You can make one at a time, custom made at the customer's request. And I think that design is absolutely fantastic, except for how expensive it is. I think it allows people to have an easier time to enter the design space, which is really nice for people with limited funds. I just wish there was more options at that level. Something that I really liked about like one of the things that they had on their website, which was you can basically do like the similar thing to that, to like a Kickstarter campaign, but the game is made. Like you already have everything set up. The only thing that you're doing is making it so that the more people that order the game, the cheaper that they all get to pay for it. So no matter what, everyone's getting a game. It's just how many. How many are we making? How cheap is it going to be? And I was like, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's a really cool model. It is just a very, very expensive relative to, especially if you want fancier components, the price increases really
pretty
quickly.
Dramatically, yeah.
It's great for like a small compact card game though. Like that's somewhat affordable via the Game Crafter.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying that is like, I wish there was more options in that space. I'm sure that there is a way to make that cheaper. I can't do it, but I wish I could. I would be a millionaire. But there has to be more options than just like one, right? Just like how we were saying, don't have Kickstarter be the only option. The fact that BackerKit and stuff like that are getting into that crowdfunding, like crowdsourcing field is nice because you have options.
Yeah, I think the only drawback I could potentially see is that Kickstarter was kind of like a go-to place where if I wanted to know what was happening, I could probably just browse Kickstarter and see a project that was upcoming. Now I kind of have to... I'm not really in a position. I'm very similar where I'm like, I'm not really backing games unless they're like very specifically local or queer. And in that case, I'm probably going to see an ad for it. And then I'll go to whatever platform I find it on, but I'm not, you'll have to probably work a little bit harder to get me to find a game that wasn't directly marketed to me. That would just be the slightly harder thing.
Which is fair. I mean, I backed 3 games, like pretty much back to back earlier this year. And only one of them was actually advertised to me, and it was organically. So I had joined the Weird Giraffe Games Discord server, and I was introduced to Way Too Many Cats. And so I was like, oh, I want it. We already talked about how much I am a fan of cat games, so Way Too Many Cats, right there. I have to have it. And while I was like surfing Kickstarter, I saw an ad for Casting Shadows by Unstable Games. So that's their new game that's coming out. And I'm a huge fan of their game, so I said, why not? And I backed that at a pretty high tier. And then I was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw Library Labyrinth. I don't know if you've seen that one, but I was like, Fight Cthulhu with Harriet Tubman. I have to buy this game. Like there's nothing I can do about this. It has been foretold. I must purchase. So
I'm pretty sure they were like play testing that at the Protospiel, like the same one I was at, and we never managed to cross paths because we were both we were both pitching cooperative games at the time. But they produced it really quick. I was like, oh damn, that's like a thing already, and I'm still pitching my game. I was like, they did it. Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting when you see something like that. It's like, oh, wow, that it could actually just become a thing that quickly. That's insane. I don't think that's normal, but I was like, that happened really quickly. So I thought that was really cool. That's one of the cool things about being in those like game design or Protospiel servers is you get to see the ideas of games that potentially will just like start showing up on Kickstarter one day. And you're like, oh, I played that. Yeah, I actually got to play a card game from someone who was local to me. The game's name is Runes of Eve. And really cool friend of mine from the Dragon Ball card game.
he started making his game after I had started already buying artwork for Glyph. And his game is already all the artwork's done. He's like starting to advertise on Facebook. I'm like, how did you do that? I need to work with you.
Yeah, why not? Get into those co-designs. Why not?
Yeah.
How can people find your games and then support and follow you, learn more?
So I am on Twitter and Facebook mostly. It's a little bit easier to get a hold of me on Twitter than it is Facebook. I am also on Discord. So on Twitter, I have I'm going to say a Ko-Fi account. Though my roommate told me it's coffee. So
I do think it's coffee.
Yeah, someone tell me which one. It's fine.
I think it's coffee, like buy me a coffee.
Which I thought was super cute. Except for the fact that you have lo-fi music.
Oh yeah, it is spelled like that with the
and
hyphen.
It's like it's spelled the same exact way except for one letter off. So it just like really messed me up. But yeah, I'm on Twitter at Bree the Blue, and I love like talking with people about everything with that. I love sharing artwork about the game. I share a ton on Coffee. I'll say it correctly.
I say we go with Ko-fi now. I think that's...
Oh, okay. We got to mix
canon.
the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, coffee and Ko-fi. So that's where I'm mainly at. I also have a website, but that's all linked off of my Twitter. So it's probably easiest to just go to Twitter.
Oh, well, thank you so much for discussing all the nerdy things and all the queer things. I sincerely enjoyed meeting you, and you taught me stuff. So appreciate it.
Yeah, that's no problem. I really appreciate you letting me be on the show.
Oh, absolutely. As a disclaimer at the end here, I just want to remind everyone we're just a couple of queer folks. We do not speak for the entire LGBTQIA plus community, nor are we trying to. The best way to be an ally is just to keep learning, listening, and remember, we're all just trying to figure it out together. That's all I have. If you're listening, know that you're loved and perfect just the way you are. And until next time, bye.